to Remembering Your Oneness with Zane Daniel and Monica Kupiec, where we know everything, and so do you. Hello. Wow. How are you?
I feel like we can finally make our introduction, like, pre-introduction on the live show now.
Right. Yeah. Because this time we didn't have time to chat at all. It was just I showed up and here we are, 1 minute of pre-talk. So
Yeah.
how's
Again,
it
it feels
going?
like it feels like it's been a while. I feel like I've missed your energy.
Oh, that's nice of you to say. Yeah, I've missed this for sure. And yeah, it feels like it's been 2 weeks, not like,
A
well, I
week.
guess it has been 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Well, it feels like what it actually was, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're in Pittsburgh right now. We're in the
Mm.
Pennsylvania hills, and it's really beautiful here. It's a little bit cloudy today, but it's cool. We're at this campground where we can just see out in all directions, and there's
Mm.
mountains and trees, and yeah, it's really neat. I really haven't spent much time in Pennsylvania, and I kind of didn't realize how beautiful it was.
Oh, yeah, I've never been to the East Coast, so I'm not too familiar with, or I mean, I've only been to Florida, like, for a weekend, but I
Yeah,
wouldn't really call that the East Coast. It's still
no,
very,
and
very
this isn't
beachy.
really the East Coast yet. I mean, Pennsylvania is very wide. It's like 8-10
Mm.
hours to get all the way across the state, and we're in the west side of the state right now. So there's
Oh,
still
okay.
plenty of journey to go. But we are interested in doing that coastal journey down the from maybe Virginia Beach or something down to
Mm.
Florida over the next couple of months. But it
Mhm.
all depends. I might actually have somebody that I'm going to go interview in Iowa. So that'll just screw it all up. But
Mm. Nice. Well, I'm
yeah.
still in Hawaii. I did have a pretty heavy, mushroom trip on Sunday,
Oh,
so
wow.
it felt like I traveled somewhere.
Yes. Yeah.
Traveled, to some different dimensions and all. So it definitely feels like I'm back in Hawaii, and, I've been painting and being busy because I do have a market coming up on Saturday. So if anyone's in Hawaii, you can come see me on the North Shore.
That's cool.
There is a You can come see my art or talk story, or I can give you some Reiki energy to clear your vibration, so that way you feel more confident within yourself.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is funny. You said it felt like you were on a trip, and you were on a trip of mushrooms. And that's why they call it a trip. I really feel because there is this perception of time that changes when you're on a plant medicine. It feels
Mhm.
like you don't have any, you feel like you've been gone for a long time. After it's over, you feel like it lasted a long time, but maybe it didn't last that long, but it felt like it. And so that whole thing, and when you go on a vacation, you change the way that you look at everything. You have
Mhm.
this renewal that happens, and there's almost always some sort of negative thing that happens on a vacation too. So you're still dealing with challenges and so forth when you're even on
Yeah.
vacation. And so all of that interplays together to create this, oh, okay, this change or this transformation that occurred while I was in, Waikiki for a week, and now
Mhm.
I'm back, and that feels different. But the same thing is true of plant medicines. That even though it's like a 4-hour experience or a 6-hour
Mhm.
experience, you still feel like, wow, I feel like I was gone for a week, and now I'm renewed, and I'm a different person than I was.
Oh, yeah. The other day, or like 2 days prior, I, like, microdosed and I was painting, and I was like, "Oh, I'm really productive. Let me try, upping my dose just to see what would happen." But it was, like, chocolates that my friend made, and
Mhm.
they were much stronger than I thought, so the energy was like, "You need to lay down now." I started
Yeah.
painting, and you're like, "You need to lay down, like, you're gonna have a different type of trip."
Right.
But it was
Yeah.
pretty cool. Like, I've never, like, tripped hard by myself. I'm usually with, like, one other person, and usually out in nature. Like, obviously on my
Yeah.
porch, like, there's trees and, like, there's plants, but I actually went inside And I definitely felt a difference of like, this is really going to be internal. And like, I traveled to the past, I traveled to the future, and like, definitely like my ego was like being started to get torn of like images of like people that I've been hanging out with, of like who's serving me and who's not. It was definitely very, like, very fascinating. And when I like somewhat woke up from it, I like realized, when did I start this? Or like when, like, my orientation of time was just completely lost. But it was very moving of like, I should probably do this more often by myself to gain like more clarity, or just to gain more like a different perspective about what's going on in my life. And a lot of it was just surrendering to that energy and allowing it to like kind of like teach me. It felt like ayahuasca very similarly,
Yeah.
of like getting visions, except there was no purging, so that was nice.
Yeah, right. Well, that can still happen on mushrooms too. I've definitely experienced that, a little bit of something that purges.
Hmm.
I wanted to say hello to, this is actually Laura Louder, not just Facebook user. So hi, Laura. And thank you, Mandy. I'm super grateful for you too. So thanks for joining us. And anybody else who's out there who wants to say hello, please do so. Tell us where you're located. We always like to know that, because for me, I might actually drive by and meet you. For Monica, she just likes to know for the heck of it, right?
Be on my little island. I'll wait for you one day. You know, I'm sure you'll hop over.
Yeah, yeah. I'll drive the van out to Hawaii, I'm sure, at some point. And then I want to say hello to Crystalline. Is it Crystalline? Crystal. It's kind of a cool spelling. I think it's Crystalline.
Maybe it's Crystal and Paul, like Crystal and Paul. Oh.
Crystal and Paul and Paul. I don't know. Well, either way, hi.
You're taking a big sigh right now.
Yeah, right.
But
Well, it's kind
I'm
of
not so, but with our topic, it's definitely, I'm not judging you for your sigh. I'm definitely curious to why you did this sigh.
right, right. Well, it's because it was kind of one thing after the next today. I've already had like 3 or 4 things and didn't really have a
Mhm.
chance to have any kind of breather in between. So it's one of those sorts of, well, Thursdays are usually pretty packed for me. So
Mhm.
that's what I was sighing about. I'm trying to take that breather right now, live with
Mhm.
you. Elaine, it's good to see you. Haven't seen Elaine in a little while. Glad she's here. Okay,
Aloha.
okay, so
So, what
topic.
would you like to talk about?
Yeah, topic. It is judgment. I mean, we talk about judgment all the time.
Mhm.
It's kind of the main obstacle to getting in the way of being able to have a life without suffering,
Mhm.
because what judgment is, attachment. Judgment is generally it's negative, right? Like, I'm going to judge this to be awesome. Well, if you do, then that's going to feel pretty good. But
Mhm.
judgment still, it can be positive, right? So like if you're really trying to go to the 0 point of non-judgment, which is this thing that nobody can really describe to you, you actually have to try to get there yourself, and you probably won't. Is this incredible thing where you're not judging whether something is good or something is bad. It just is.
Mhm.
So, that's where we can experience a kind of an all new spiritual existence, but
Mhm.
it's also kind of taking you out of the human existence, because the human existence, all it is judgment. You are constantly in judgment, you're constantly in desire, because you have to drink water and you have to eat food and you have to do all this stuff in order to survive. And
Mhm.
judgment comes from that. Judgment comes from, oh, is my tribe member collecting enough berries? Did I upset the chief and I'm going to get extricated from the tribe? So the judgment is very much a part of this 3D experience. So we could decide, we could judge judgment and say that it's a bad thing, or we could say, hey, you know what? I'm going to have judgment, and I know I'm going to have judgment. And so instead, I'm going to not have like constant judgment, and I'm going to find a way to feel unconditional love.
Mhm. Well, the whole concept of, judgment, turning judgment into curiosity is almost like just for stopping yourself from putting the judgment and instead putting yourself into their shoes of like, why did they just do this in a way, or like what was their intention? And that's where the curiosity can kind of start. But like the curiosity could also be almost like not necessarily like a negative aspect, but it could be like you're thinking too much of the assumptions maybe. But also like I feel like the curiosity could also be taken of like just be open to what you just received and then take it in as it is versus putting that initial judgment of like, oh my god, you just hurt me, versus like, wait, like where in my body do I feel this like sensation coming from, and is it more of a spirit based sensation or an ego based sensation? So
Yep.
it's like definitely like more of a curiosity of like within yourself, like where are you feeling this so-called judgment that's about to happen, or like why are you starting this cycle of wanting to make a judgment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love all that. Absolutely. Yeah. The curiosity is, well, what does this feel like? What is
Mhm.
this? What? How could I describe it to someone else? Is it a weight? Is it a fluttering? Is it a tightness? Is it a pain? You know, that's always fun and interesting and powerful, because when you look at the whole world with curiosity and interest, you're watching the movie and you're not as worried about the how it all comes out in the end.
Mhm.
If you're watching a movie, you're probably rooting for a particular result. You're probably like caring for a character or two or seven or 10. And you're kind of going, oh, I hope they win the football game, or I hope they beat the bad guy, or I hope they reconcile their differences, or whatever the conflict of the story is. You're sitting there kind of hoping that the conflict gets resolved. That's a
Mhm.
human kind of experience. But once the movie is over, you return to your normal life, and it no longer matters. It's almost instantly gone. And so the level of your interest in seeing the results of the movie that you are rooting for is down here.
Mhm.
And the level of the interest in your own experience coming out the way that you exactly want it is freaking way up here. So if you can start to look at your own life and the world through the lens of watching the most amazing movie you've ever seen, then all of a sudden your interest in having it turn out a very specific way can start to
Yeah.
drop down. And well, what's the benefit of that? The benefit of that is not taking it so darn seriously, because when you take
Mhm.
it so darn seriously, then you're attached, and you're attached to results.
Yeah.
And if the results don't come, then you're miserable. And then you judge, because you go, well, if that person had just done this, then these results would have been better. And why is
Mhm.
this CEO such a jerk and doing all this? Because that's screwing up everything for everyone. And why this politician do this and blah, blah, blah. And you go into judgment about all of it instead of just going, wow, what a great movie this is. I want to see what
Yeah.
happens next. Right.
Mhm. I was it's like very relatable. I think a couple maybe 2 weeks ago or maybe a little longer, I watched on Amazon Prime the Tomorrow War or something like that. And I at first it was like, "Oh, this is like super predictable. Like why am I watching this?" And I was like making that judgment. And then I'm just like, "Wait, like it's a really pretty well-made movie for an Amazon like thing." So I started to like drop that judgment. And then all of a sudden I'm like, "Oh, well, this is probably going to happen." And then it didn't. It like had a lot of like curveballs that like I wasn't expecting. And I'm like, "Wow, like if when at the end of the movie, like I thought something like I thought what I predicted was completely wrong." And I'm like, this is great. Like it definitely did not do like the typical like war hero story or something like that. Or it
Right.
was just like completely like different than what my judgment was giving. And then, like, I guess I became more curious of like, well, what's gonna happen because this curveball was wrong or like my prediction was wrong. And
Uh-huh.
it's like instead of like actually just enjoying a movie as it is, then thinking or perceiving it to be a certain way because so many movies were done this way, like you kind of do stop enjoying like just the moment of watching a movie per se, or like you're constantly thinking of something else or not being so present with the movie that you miss like a certain line that like hits you in a certain way or helps you perceive something or gives you that like enlightening feeling because of this one quote that the character had said. So it's definitely like interesting with like movies because they are set in stone that they have a beginning and end, where if we take that with our life, obviously we don't really know our end, but if we're able to stop predicting what our end will be like, or like, or like the end of a relationship or the end of a marriage, or like, or how something will pan out, we could just really just enjoy the present moment with this person or this activity that we're in, because we're so focused on the end part that we miss those little moments of like, a bird chirping or like a sunset or something like that. So it's almost like very identical with like movies. It's like stop judging a movie because of a past experience or a past like or a different movie that you've seen. It's really just being solely present of like, okay, I've committed to this. Let me learn how to relax because I chosen to watch a movie. Movies are usually made so you can relax or
Right.
wind down, and like that's the goal, or that's the, I guess you could say, the curious feeling that I want to explore because I want to learn how to relax, and movies tend to do that to me or to anyone else, I'm sure. So it's like the same concept of your real life. It's like, how can I relax in my everyday activities, or how can I tone something down so that way I'm not anxious or I'm not, sad about a certain situation because I keep thinking about the end outcome or how something should have been to have been played out differently. It's like if you see yourself as a movie, like try to enjoy the movie as it is versus wanting to change a scene or whatever.
Right. And I have to throw this question because Jamie's
It
asking.
is.
It
It is
is.
the
Okay. It
movie with
is. Okay.
Chris
Good.
Pratt. Mhm.
Okay. Cool.
Highly
Okay.
recommended. Like I said, I was surprised.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right. So what you just did, we were talking about all that stuff, and it hit me. I realized happily ever after. Right. A
Mhm.
movie ends, especially an older movie, but in many cases, happily ever after is the end of the movie. So what do we see? Right. We watch a 90-minute experience where it's all conflict, and then it's resolved at the end. The romantic movie ends where the two people fall in love happily
Mhm.
ever after. And now there's no more conflict ever again. Like that's what we decide, that
Yeah.
when that movie is over, all the conflict is over and now they just live in bliss, which is total BS, right? And I would say that it even contributes to the idea that we say things like, well, I can't have a family unless I get a good job. I can't
Mhm.
have happiness unless I get kids. I can't
Mhm.
have this unless I have a good house. Or once this happens, then I'll finally be happy. Once that happens, then it's the same thing, right? The conflict is not the joy. The joy is when the conflict is over. But
Yeah.
instead, to actually look at life and go, yes, I love the conflict because the conflict is the interest. If I tried to
Mhm.
write a movie script that had no conflict, that everything just went smoothly, do you know how many people would pick that up? Freaking zero. Like nobody wants that in their movie theater. Nobody wants to spend any money on that. I got told that right away when I started into that world, that if your story doesn't have conflict, it's not a story.
Yeah.
It's garbage. So we look at conflict as the thing we have to get over rather than being able to enjoy the journey. And so that means that we are essentially judging conflict as bad, and
Mhm.
that the only good thing is when the conflict is done. Conflict's done.
Yeah.
Now we live happily ever after, which of course doesn't happen. So the best way, and I've been saying this, but I just kind of put it together with the movie concept, is that the journey is the thrill. Don't wait until you get to the end to have the
Mhm.
positive feeling or the positive whatever. Realize that you can have it right now. You don't have to wait till the end. You don't have to
Yeah.
wait for the end of the work year so that you can go on vacation. Enjoy the moment that you're in right now, because you are on vacation anyway. You're living on a paradise planet, and you're normally
Mhm.
not even one of these human things. So every moment that you have getting to be one of these human things is a vacation.
Yeah. Well, also, like, yesterday I read something on Twitter. It was like someone said, I've been saying to myself, this has been a miserable week. And then the person wrote, I've been saying that for the last 3 years. And
Yep,
it's like the same concept. It's like you're not
it is.
enjoying the journey, or you're not realizing that this is happening to you, or that, you're living for the weekend, or you're living for the next big, like, vacation, or the next big thing that's happening in your life. It's like, how can you really change that mind? I think it's your mindset too. I've recently been trying to, or yesterday I was riding my bike, and I was just trying to, like, reflect on, like, when I first moved to Hawaii, what was my mindset like, or how did I feel, and how was I so easily able to attract different men in my life, or different, like, incomes, and, like, how can I embody that right now? And yesterday it finally clicked to me. I was very free in my body. My body was just feeling so great when I was surfing, when I was hiking. I was letting go, and I was able to just let life flow through me. And sometimes now it's like, yeah, I'm like 7 years older than that, but it's like, how can I get my body to be feeling more free again, so that I can start attracting or manifesting these new codes into my life, per se. And it's the same thing of, like, dropping that judgment, of, like, just being curious for life. I was very curious to discovering how to surf, or what this next hike will lead to me, or what I'll experience through this next man. And it was that curiosity that was driving me through life. And now that, like, maybe I've had so many experiences, like, that curiosity maybe has, like, lost its magic on me, but I could still have that sense of, okay, I'm going on this bike ride. Who am I going to meet today? What am I going to see that's going to help elevate me? And then one after the other, I saw a friend that I haven't seen in a while, and I was watching a beautiful sunset. Like, it was just like a lot of good things. And again, it was that mindset of, like, how can I be more free within my body, so that way I can attract exactly what it is that I'm needing in my life.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I love this is actually from Caitlin. Caitlin, since you're watching on the eliminating negative entity attachments thing, you have to click on the link so that your name appears. Anyway, okay, so that was another issue for me, walking around trying to move everything from the wrong column into the right column. Instead, it can all go into the is column, right? Yeah, that's absolutely true. Or it can all go into the right column because it is in the is column, right? That's the layer on top of the non-judgment. Is, well, if you really want to look at it as just is, then there's like a neutrality to that, or
Yeah.
almost like a boredom to it. And so I kind of like applying unconditional love to the is column, because
Mhm.
that means, what does unconditional love mean? It means I love it anyway, like, and even if it's crappy, or even if it's dumb, or
Yeah.
even if it's annoying, or even if it's beautiful, or even if it's whatever. So you can actually say, hey, I'm moving everything from the right and wrong column to the is perfect column, because that's what it truly is.
Yeah.
Everything is exactly as it's supposed to be.
Mhm. I was also reading, like, it was this one spiritual girl on Instagram, and she made, like, a post about sacrifices, of how, sometimes you have to do something to sacrifice for something. But it kind of was like in a tone of, like, what she asked the question, like, what are you currently sacrificing to do? And then I made the comment of, like, maybe you should change your perception about sacrifice into an unconditional love action that you're taking in order for you to move forward. Because I was kind of thinking like, sure, I moved to Hawaii, but I didn't sacrifice leaving my friends and family. I did this for me, and this was what I needed to move forward in my life or to enhance my spiritual gifts. So it's like I was never in a negative state of like, oh, I left everything, just to start this, or I didn't have that negative perception about what I did. And I feel like the word sacrifice is definitely more in that negative realm, or that like I I wouldn't say wrong column, but it's definitely like it's you're inputting that judgment onto yourself that you're doing something that's not necessarily good for someone else, or you're definitely hurting someone else because you're doing this, versus you're using that unconditional love like, okay, I need to move because my spirit is calling me there, and this is where I'll meet either a person or a situation that's going to help elevate me, and then maybe I'll move back to my so-called hometown, that then I'll become stronger. But it's like you're not making a sacrifice, you're making that unconditional love action. And I feel like when you can take
Mhm.
more unconditional love actions, then you'll start to see that really flow, or that curiosity, within yourself, that drive to move forward or put things more in that is column, because you're realizing things that you're sacrificing or things that you're judging are just part of your life, are just part of finding that balance between, the good and the evil per se. But you really need the evil in order to see the good, or to see the neutrality of it. Because I mean, seeing things as neutral is okay too. But it's also, I feel like when you're in that state of feeling things are neutral, it's because you've actually experienced the evil quite a bit, and you've just turned into your acceptance, because neutrality could also just be a state of acceptance, I feel.
Yeah, okay. So I want to talk about this neutrality kind of thing. I think it's interesting. So, as a kid, I was a huge fan of sports. I really liked football, especially. And I had the opportunity when I was in college, I got to be the reporter for my college sports
Mm-hmm.
team. So, I was, for the college newspaper. So, I would go to the games and I would sit in the press box. And I wanted my college team to win, and so I found myself every once in a while when my college team did well, I would go, yeah, like a fan. And I
Yeah.
was scolded by the media people, like, you don't cheer in the press box. That's not what you do here. And I had to like kind of change the way that I did things. And then I ended up doing it again for another sports league. And I did lots of this sort of stuff when I was younger. And I realized that I got really good at just sitting there and secretly rooting for my team but not showing it. But then
Mm-hmm.
eventually what I found is I no longer cared who won or lost, and so I felt like, oh well, that's kind of sad, like I'm missing out on that fun, that excitement, that um joy that you get out of rooting for something to happen. And so now that I'm way out of it, I just recently went and saw a football game again. Jaybird and I did, and we saw my favorite team play, and it was interesting because I still had a lot of that carryover from that previous thing where I'm supposed to be non-biased during this experience, and there's 80,000 people screaming, right? Like at the same time, I'm like, yay, I had to like actually let it out, and so then
Yeah.
I kind of got into it over time. So it's pretty good, it's pretty fun.
She's teasing you. Your
Yeah,
favorite?
yeah. Yes, I
Is it
see
her
that.
favorite then?
Well, it is now, so yeah, so it's great. Yeah. But so that's the kind of the neutrality experience, right? Is that to actually remove your joy and love for something for another reason, or it's to, can you go ahead and still have the positive excitement over the thing, or do you have to just always be in, well, this just is. I don't know if that's really a great experience here as a
Yeah.
human being. It's much more fun to actually enjoy the good things, but it's another thing entirely to get completely wrapped up in the bad things and allow yourself to suffer over a long period of time.
Mhm. So my take on neutrality is more of like, say you're in a verbal argument with someone. it would be more of like you stepping back and being not necessarily being neutral about like your expression, but you're neutral in the sense that you're using your intuitive guidance to talk back to that person versus like, oh, I'm just going to go and rant off on you before thinking about it. So being neutral is more of like stopping your initial reaction and then voicing your truth about a certain situation. It's like almost in the sense that if someone is sexually harassing you and you're allowing it to happen because you're staying neutral about it, that's not staying neutral about it. That's you kind of like being weak and like letting this person do this to you,
Right.
and versus like actually standing your ground, be like, hey, well, it depends on the situation, but um I'm just giving one example of that, like, you're able to voice yourself to a coworker if they're doing that to you of like, hey, you're making me feel very uncomfortable, or that you know you're using this momentum of like empowerment in a way of that you're not going to be stepped on anymore. So I
Right.
think the neutrality is more of like not letting someone punch you in a way, or not letting someone be the punching bag per se.
Hmm.
So neutrality is more of like, I understand myself and I know that I am worthy to get over this, but also that, there was something that I've done to have attracted this into my life. That why did I attract someone that is kind of like beating down on me or like making me suffer per se. So it's like a neutral sense of that you're not giving yourself this judgment of like, oh, I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not doing this or that, but it's also not giving yourself that voice of like, oh, I'm going to hunt this person down and I'm going to make them suffer because they did this to me. So it's almost like you're not going the wrong route of dealing with it the negative way per se, or like the more, I guess, technical way of getting back at them for like to make them suffer even more. You're staying neutral in the sense of honoring it as, again, as it is per se, but
Hmm.
like giving it a more conscious unconditional love like reaction of like taking the right steps of not letting it over control your emotions and then your balance as well, because
Right.
obviously those things are hard to do in the moment, but like if you can regroup and then restructure yourself the next day or the following day to then own up to your voicing yourself of what has happened to you,
Yeah.
then it's like you're still acting from like a neutral spot per se.
Yeah. This is an
It's, like,
area
hard
that I
to
haven't.
explain it,
Yeah.
but, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's so many different scenarios that can
Yeah.
happen, but, like, I feel like it's still, like, neutrality is, like, acting from a place of love, then of greed, then like, of forcing yourself to get what you want or to get the reaction that you want or that you expected.
Okay, so there's a lot of things that I got to try to get across here or understand myself. First of all, hi, Jackie. And second of all, then, okay, so I haven't really explored neutrality a whole heck of a lot, I have to be honest, because I really do look at neutrality. If you look at the emotional frequency chart by David R. Hawkins, you'll see that the lower vibrational emotions all are vibrate at a lower frequency. So you're going to see fear, and you're going to see shame and unworthiness and disappointment and frustration, and all that is going to be
Mhm.
at the bottom of that chart. Then at the top of the chart, it goes acceptance, and it goes, excitement and gratitude and unconditional love. Right in the middle is neutrality, and neutrality is a vibration that is the border, or the fence between the higher vibrational emotions and the lower vibrational emotions. And what he described in that neutrality was, it was neutrality slash boredom. So
Boredom?
boredom, yeah.
Mm,
So boredom is obviously the something you don't really want, because you're not engaged in a positive way, but you're not engaged in a negative way. You're just, bleh, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I care, sort of thing.
mm.
So from the emotional frequency chart, I'm not a big fan of neutrality as a positive experience, because it isn't. It's oh, what's the What's the place that you go to after you die before you go to heaven or hell? And it's oh my gosh, yeah, I can't think of the word. There's a word for this thing. But anyway, maybe someone else say it. Purgatory. That's it, right? Purgatory is the totally neutral place, totally,
Mhm.
absolutely neutral, nothing going on. And it's not necessarily, or limbo. I like Mandy. Or it's not necessarily the place that you really want to go. You want to go
Mhm.
and be in a happy state. So that in that way, I'm not a huge fan of neutrality. I'm more of a fan of unconditional love. And so then to tap into what Caitlin said and what you said, I think, Monica, is where did it go? Yeah. Neutrality equals neutral love for all. So one of the things that we've talked about in the past has been the idea of the 0 point.
Mm.
So this is a spiritual concept that if you reach the 0 point of non-judgment, then you are in a type of bliss that is hard to describe, and most people don't get there. And it's kind of like samadhi. It's this thing that you're always trying to get to, but you can't get to, and
Yeah.
if you try to get to it. But it is the place of great spiritual power, great spiritual awareness, and you can transcend all kinds of things from being there. And it is essentially kind of a state of neutrality, because it's a state of not having any judgment, just acknowledging everything that is exactly as it is and allowing it to be so, and not trying to change anything, and so on and so forth. So there's value to it. But from one standpoint, I find that I would much rather be in a state of unconditional love and gratitude and excitement than I would be in just straight up neutrality.
Yeah. Well, I feel like neutrality is also a choice because there's definitely people that can really, set their emotions aside and not give a fuck. So I feel like there's still like maybe just different terms of neutrality, or even through that pyramid that you were saying of it being boredom. I wouldn't even classify neutrality as boredom, because I feel like boredom it's its own like definition, because boredom is like a form of lack, I think, and neutrality wouldn't really be as a form of lack. It would just be your you see both sides of the story, or you see both sides of the situation of like, okay, if I'm the third party trying to, maybe like a therapist, if I'm the therapist, I gotta stay neutral because I need to hear both sides of the story. But that therapist sees both as they are versus making picking a side of like, oh yeah, this person wronged you, so I'm not gonna like bother helping this guy because you clearly are right. Being neutral is siding with both people and understanding where they have come from. So I feel like that's more of like what, or I guess in my perception of neutrality would be that, is seeing both sides of the story versus making that initial judgment of like, you did wrong and you did right. It's like, why did that person do that to you?
Right. Yeah. And I think that when you are in a state of, oh, that's amazing, or oh, that's terrible, then you're applying your own limited field of understanding to that thing. So, you give the example of, I was walking down the street and I had an envelope filled with $100 bills, and it was a couple of $1,000, and I ended up dropping it on the road. I got home and realized that I had dropped it, and I've decided that that was a terrible experience. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just lost a couple $1,000. It's just
Mhm.
on the street somewhere. What an idiot I am. I can't believe, negative, negative, negative. Then you have the other person who's walking down the street, whose mother is in the hospital and they don't have the money to pay the bills, and or whatever, something terrible is going on, and they come upon this envelope that you dropped with thousands of dollars, and they go, oh my gosh, thank goodness, this is a sign. This is a sign
Mhm.
from that I'm going to figure out a way to help pay my mom's medical bills. Thank goodness I found this. This is just the start. This is just the beginning. And
Yeah.
it completely changes their life. And they decide that that was the most positive experience that they could have ever had. Well, so who's right? Right? Neither. It just is. And when
Mhm.
you do that, sometimes you remove the mystery or the fun of it, because you're like, oh, well, maybe it was the universe that made me drop the money because I actually have enough and it's not a big deal, so that that other person could find hope. But
Mm.
or you just look at it as it is. Oh yeah, it just kind of fell out of my pocket and they picked it up and they decided that it was a sign, and that was what changed their entire life.
Yeah.
So many different ways to look at all this. And I like my two senses thought here. Boring is a mind function. Absolutely. It is the mind judging the current experience. So yeah. So in that case, boredom is still a judgment. It isn't true neutrality. It is a decision that
Mhm.
there isn't enough going on. And so therefore I am judging that this is a problem. Yep. Perfect. Perfect. My two cents.
Yeah, I like that too. It
Yeah.
just nails down that like how my perception of boredom is not a neutral state because, yeah,
Yep.
it is a choice that you made to feel this way. Or
Yep.
again, there is a lack within you that made you feel this way, or that you're not trying to allow the joy to come through, or I don't know what other experience that you're having to do that.
Yeah, let's see who we have here. So Caitlin says that neutrality is very intense. It is allowing both sides of the coin and the myriad of little differences in between to be there without changing them to their fullest, most heightened experience and emanating love. It's strength, but that's to me. Neutrality is living with no right or wrong, living without having to know the meaning. And that's something that I
Yeah.
definitely teach frequently, is that why we're spending so much time trying to understand why something happened to us,
Mm.
rather than just going like, hey, I don't have to know why. Knowing why is just a brain function, like to use my two senses terminology. Knowing why is just seeking comfort. So let's just go ahead and go with it and trust that it's happening for a great reason.
Mhm. Yeah, I had a really nice dream yesterday, last night. Yeah, last night. And I was just like curious to why, this person was popping up into my dream again. I was like had some few dreams about this person like in the beginning of summer. And I called one of my friends. I was like, "Oh, do you know anything about dreams? Like, I'm just curious to why I had this dream about him." And and before, like, I always like to perceive dreams as when you wake up, what you feel is more important than the dream itself. And I know when I woke up, I felt very balanced, very free, very good. But I was just asking her like these questions because I was curious to why I had this dream about this person, even though I've like never met this person. So again, it's like that sense of like wanting to know why is like it's still like a judgment of like why am I experiencing this or what's the importance of this? I think it's also like finding the importance of it in one's life is also like still a judgment because you're not experiencing like, oh, this dream just made me feel really good. Let's just leave it at that. It's like still trying to like go into the tunnel of like why. Um, and it's not like I can change much because it was a dream. So it was definitely like just a channeled message that was coming through to me or showing me my worth or showing me something that I needed to again feel.
Yeah. I like this message from Jaybird too. She had a big aha moment with the realization of, I am experiencing this. It just surprised her and then made her tear up because it felt curious love, burst of love flow through, and it felt as if I was above my body watching myself in this movie of life. Yeah,
Mm.
and that goes back to our movie thing. And it's kind of funny because I had this similar kind of thing and I called it this is my experience. It's almost the same terminology. And I also had that aha moment when I said, "Oh, this is my experience," and I've tried really hard to get this across to others, and I feel like I've never been able to get it across. It's just one of those things that when you have the experience, you know what you mean, and there aren't words that describe it. And I have a feeling that
Yeah.
hers is similar because it's really hard to get to that moment to say, yeah, this is my experience. This is very much unique to me, and it's not it's not good or it's not bad. This is,
Yeah.
and it's completely valid. This experience is valid, and how I treat it is valid, and how I think about it is valid, and how I describe it is valid, and whether I want to be upset about it or happy about it or miserable about it, totally valid. Every experience is exactly that. That's non-judgment, because yeah, if you want to be all mad about something, fine, do that. Be mad. Like if you find that to be fulfilling in some way or necessary for some reason, then go for it. And if you don't find it to be that way, then do a different thing. And that's
Mhm.
all wonderful and valid.
Well, I think it's very important to feel all of those emotions. Like, obviously, we're not telling you to be neutral when you're trying to be angry or when you're trying to cry or something. Like, it's not about toughening yourself up of like, okay, I shouldn't be crying at this time. You know, this isn't acceptable. It's more of like you're accepting that you're crying and that you have these emotions, and then you're able to regroup and act more consciously within your body of like how else can I deal with this emotion, or what else does this emotion need from me right now, of how can I better serve this emotion, because then I won't have to cry the next time this emotion like pops up, or I'll be able to learn and become stronger when this emotion or this sensation comes to me again. So it's more of like just being aware of like how certain aspects of your life react within you, kind of like that curiosity of like, where in my body do I feel this emotion or this sensation? And it could be just an imbalance of like eating or a deficiency in something, or maybe you're not, really taking that conscious breath to allowing your blood to circulate within your body, which is causing all these different blockages. So it's definitely like the more you can tune into yourself, you can then reassess the judgments that are happening, or reassess the judgments that you're giving onto others, because maybe there is a judgment that you constantly give to others without being aware that you're giving these judgments. Like, just start being aware with like the person that you always like to vent to. Are you constantly venting about the same thing, or are you constantly venting about us like reoccurring events that happen to you? And like when you can assess that, then you can see like, wait, like I keep talking in circles. Like, how do I stop this circle, or how can I better serve this circle that I keep repeating in a way?
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay. So I want to talk about it as something that I had a bit of an epiphany on, but it's an incomplete idea. So I'm totally open to what anybody has to say about it. And it's about, okay, because this is coming because of what you were just saying, Monica, and because what my 2 cents just said. This experiencing is happening. This is all that is happening, and our minds create an interpretation of the experience because
mhm,
we're receiving the information through our senses. So we're receiving the visuals, and we're receiving the audio, and we're receiving the tactile and all of it. And so we are interpreting what's actually happening around us, and we do that. Time is required for us to do that. So for instance, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a musician a long time ago, and he said, the thing that I like about making music is that you can't digest the music in an instant. Like,
mhm,
and you're probably going to argue with this, Monica, but you can sort of digest a visual in an instant because of our eyes. We have the capability of seeing a still image and absorbing the still image pretty much instantaneously. We can instantly recognize a face. We can instantly recognize a location. We're really good at that. And but meanwhile, if you listen to a song, you can't just hear in an instant one note, boop, and go, oh, I love this song. This song's amazing, right? You have to have time for the 3-minute song to play out, and then you finally have a full picture of what that was, right?
mhm.
So in that way, it's just like talking. I'm speaking, I'm communicating ideas, but I'm making all these sounds and little variations in the sounds, and your brain and your ears and everything is interpreting this data coming in, and you're able to complete thoughts out of the noises that I'm making out of my mouth. But if at any moment you just took a snapshot, I'm just like, and it has no meaning at all, right? You have to have the constant flow of all that. Okay.
Mhm.
So then I was sitting in front of a campfire. This is how this happened. So then I realized that I'm looking at fire, and fire is this thing that is happening over time. So it's like there and it's kind of not there. And there's other, and there's lots of movement. And so looking at a fire, that same period of time is almost required in order to enjoy a fire. But
Mhm.
if you looked at a cliff, you don't need time to perceive the cliff. You instantly perceive the cliff. So even the elements, if you think about fire and wind and air, water and earth,
Mhm.
all have a different time signature for you to be able to recognize them. Water is different, but it's slower than fire. Fire's like instantly changing. Water kind of
Mhm.
sits in a pool and there's waves and there's some changes that's happening, but not as many as like a solid cliff or something. Okay. So now if we were to look at everything with that same time ability, then we would also actually see that even Earth can change very frequently. If we sped up time, right, and we watched as mountains come crashing out of the thing, and
Mhm.
lava comes pouring, and it changes the landscape, and everything's just changing. If we looked at it from that time scale, then the changes of Earth are as fast as the changes of fire are for us at our current time scale.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said all that, but it's just super interesting to me. And I'm really hoping that there's some great reason why I explained all that, because someone's going to go, yeah, that does blah, blah.
Well, you said that you have an incomplete thought. What was your incomplete thought?
Well, that's it. Like, I
Oh.
just gave you the whole thing, and I have no idea why, right? Like, I don't know why this is important to me, but I feel like it is, and that there's like some great reason that I just spent 5 minutes explaining all of that.
So, I'm just trying so can you summarize that in, like 2 to 3 words? Like,
Oh
what w
no.
no? Like,
um,
I feel
fi-
like you started it with one thing, and then it ended up to be like, "Oh, these let's just watch the mountains grow from"
fire
like
fire
a
is
time lapse of the
fast.
earth.
Fire is fast, and Earth is slow. Uh,
Were
you
you
know,
shrooming? Like
like no, and what is it? Songs,
Oh,
require
okay, okay.
time,
So,
right?
okay,
And pictures
um,
don't.
okay.
Okay, there.
I know where my point was. So essentially the song thing is very similar to a movie, except a song
Hmm.
is like 3 minutes versus a movie is an hour or 2.
Yes,
So
yes,
it's like you can't foreshadow a song because you've never heard of it versus like a movie, like a lot of movies kind of have like the same theme so you can kind of foreshadow. But with a song, you're kind of like left with this more curious state. So actually when I first started meditating when I was like 14, 15, I would actually listen to a lot of, like, music, that have just, like it was, like, M83 I think M83? It was just a lot of just, like, sensorial, like, with a lot of, like, ups and downs, kinda like Hans Zimmer type of music, and I
okay,
would just feel the flow of the music, and when I can actually feel my vibration, like, shifting or, like, I could feel my like, an out of body experience, that's when I call the song being good, and I started doing that much sooner because my brother is a really good musician, so he would also just play basic chords and get into this trance, and then that would reciprocate to me becoming into this trance too, and that's how I kinda determine when a song is good because of, like, just being grown up with him, like, playing guitar and then, like, him having a band and then, like, kinda, like, understanding the structures of, like, songs. So, it's like, for me, like, songs are more relatable when I can feel these sensations rising up to me or feel like my crown chakra is like opening or like having that like it's kind of like having those like tuning fork like adjustments being done. So it's almost like what you're saying is that you need to experience or kind of like enjoy the process of the song. Like you're enjoying the journey. And
right.
I feel like you watching that fire was just like you enjoying this journey of this fire crackling or this fire just moving around. And you were so hypnotized by it that it made you wonder, like, why don't I enjoy more, maybe not you specifically, but
Oh,
like why don't I enjoy more of life just like this, of watching the movements of the fire or enjoying the crackling of the different sounds. Like it could just be like you're stuck in traffic and be like, well, wait, I'm stuck in traffic, but look at all this scenery around me. Like maybe you're not in a scenic place, but one time I was stuck in
well,
traffic and I looked to the right. I was like, wow, these mountains are pretty beautiful. This is a great way to be like stuck in traffic. But I
right,
wasn't angry that I was stuck in traffic and like,
right,
I want to be home now. It was more of like, okay, let me I'm standing still. Let me take a photo of this nice mountain. Let me just like play with the music and like dance a little bit, sing along. And like I'm enjoying the process of being stuck in traffic. And I feel
right,
like that's what your song analogy was. It's like you're enjoying every beat until the last second. And then like sure you're making the judgment at the end of it of like, oh, did I like this song or not? Or like, am I going to keep listening to this song because it made me feel good? But I feel like when you're at the end of your deathbed, like you don't want to be making that judgment of like, I don't really like my life too much. Or you kind of want to say like, wow, I really lived a beautiful life because I did enjoy, that sunset that was, calling me, or I enjoyed that move that I made because it was calling to me. So it's almost like you want to go where your curiosity is taking you, or because there is like these, you know there's a reason why you had these thoughts to do something. And for me, I've always just been curious of that intuition of these voices of like, why do I want to go here, or like why do I have this sense to do this? And when I follow it, it's just something super magical.
right. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like I went to the Grand Canyon, right? And I
Mm,
was like, okay, it's the Grand Canyon. Cool. What else are we doing? Right? Like it was almost instantaneously done for me. Like I because there was no change. I was just looking at a big hole in the ground, and for me, I
mhm,
kind of wanted the song. I wanted the fire. I wanted the waterfall, but it was none of that. It was just a solid thing, just a big
mhm,
giant hole, and I could kind of, and I'm like looking at oh, there's a bird flying. Yep, it's a bird. Okay. Uh, and at that time I couldn't enjoy it, right? Because I just was amazed that it was this thing that everybody was so excited about, and it's just a giant hole in the ground. But that's a very limited perspective. That is not taking advantage of the absolute immense beauty. But on the flip side, I've been stuck in traffic where it's not very beautiful around. It's actually pretty horrible, and you're surrounded by all these cars, and so you're looking in and looking at all the people like, oh, look at that person. I wonder what their life is like. Isn't that interesting? Oh, look at the kid in the back who's crying right now. Like, okay, let's look over here.
mhm.
Oh, wow, that person has duct tape on their window, and it's
Yeah.
you can find interest wherever you are. It just depends on how you decide to look at things.
Mhm. Or it's about like maybe it's about putting on a podcast and like or learning while you're stuck in traffic. It's like how can you change that perception of like, oh my gosh, I hate traffic, to it working out for you. Like I was always stuck in traffic when I worked in town. I would be stuck in sometimes an hour and a half, or hour and a half to 2 hour traffic. And instead of being angry about it, I used that time to decompress from work. Because once I actually hit home, I never once like really had to vent about work or what happened. I would actually forget about it. Like I would be oblivious to what had happened during that day because I had decompressed and dissolved that. Like sometimes I would listen to heavy metal music and just like scream it out, but it was like my way of coping with it and like really feeling my emotions, and that something had bothered me, and trying to let it go through heavy metal music. And it's like some people will perceive that like heavy metal music is bad, but it does serve its purpose for you
Oh, I've
to
always
let
said that.
to like help you feel those like sensations or depression or something to help you get out of it. Like my brother was in like a thrash metal band, and he had a lot of like his fans say that they've helped them overcome depression or suicide. So it's like everything serves its purpose, but judgment is the one that kind of stops you from feeling life, because it's going to stop you from, exploring the sensation of, like, being in a mosh pit at a heavy metal band or something like that, or experience you to see the joys of different things, because you've actually just made that judgment. Even me, I made the judgment of, like, I don't need ayahuasca, like, I meditate so much, like, I resisted psychedelics, but it was something that I really needed and opened myself up. And then once I tried it, like, it's like, oh, like, I feel like everyone should try this because it's so powerful, it's so moving. But it's like that initial judgment when you have s- on something for trying for the first time, that's what just blocks you from your joy or
from the
or
experience,
anything.
whatever it might
Yeah.
be. Yeah. Yeah, it's always funny to me to go to concerts and you go and there's people that are really into it, and then there's people in the back that are just like,
Yeah.
why did you just come to this? What, have some fun, enjoy yourself. But what that's going on there is me judging them and saying that their experience isn't valid. But
Mhm.
that's shame on me for judging them. And yet also, of course, if we go into true non-judgment, judge away, because that's, I'm not going to judge you for judging.
Mhm.
And so with that, we come to the end of our hour. Amazing. Thanks everybody
Feel like we
for
can keep talking for another hour.
Oh, I know, it'd be easy, yep. But thanks everybody for participating and for saying wonderful things and for watching and for being your incredible selves. I love you unconditionally.
Thank you, and have a beautiful day, everybody.
All right. Bye everybody. Bye Jackie. Bye Mandy.
Bye, my